Coach, do you remember anything particular from the series with Oklahoma State when you were here before and some of the matchups you guys had?
That would have played twice in Gallagher. I have the utmost respect for Coach Sutton. Have known him obviously since prior to graduating from college. Mason, who's my youngest son, was born in what was the second season I was here as an assistant. I think we got beat by 3. Everybody talks about the 3 that AC hit. So Logan would have been on that team. AC missed the 3, the same 3, off the same, what you guys would call play, at Oklahoma State. Nobody ever seems to talk about that. So I remember that I watched that game from the hospital on Rock Prairie. That's where Mason was born the night that we played Oklahoma State, what would have been the second time.
Coach, do you like the SEC Big 12 Challenge and kind of splitting up conference play in the middle of it with an inter-conference challenge?
As an employee at an SEC institution, I probably should say no. If I was not employed, I think most coaches would say, SEC employees should say yes, but I think most coaches would say no to that question. It's the only time in my career that it's ever happened, so maybe I will like it.
Okay.
I've never had a non-conference game during conference play, and so I think we're going about it the right way thus far. I know yesterday was our day off. Wednesday has been our day off throughout the month because we play Tuesday, Saturday. But I don't really know how to answer the question because I've never done it before.
Joseph Jones had a pretty big shot that same year here against Oak State, right?
Yeah, Joe, for a non-shooter, Joe made really big shots. Easily one of my favorite players ever. Not because he was a good player or a great player. I thought he was a good player, but just because of who he was and how he went about his work. He was one of the first former players that reached out to me once I was hired. I've had a great relationship with all of those guys ever since I left. Dominique Kirk, Josh Carter, D. Sloan, D. Rowe, BD obviously on our staff. Signed Joe here when I was an assistant. AK, Big Joe, AC, Twan, all those guys. I've talked to all of them, still talk to all of them, talked to them before I was the coach here. But Joe was, I was the post coach, which basically meant I just threw him the ball in practice. There was no coaching. Coach did the coaching, but Joe did hit a big shot. Those, a lot of really good coaches on those staffs that work for Coach Sutton. Paul Graham, who's now the head coach at Skyline High School, who went on to become the head coach at Washington State. Glenn Ciprian, who has been here before. Kyle Keller, who's been here before. Both of Coach Sutton's sons. A lot of really good coaches that work for Coach. Gene Cady worked for Coach when he was at Arkansas. That's who Kwanzaa worked for, so yeah.
3-3, 6 games into this, is making the postseason something you talk to your guys about that, or what is your approach on that?
Yes, sir. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong, Brandon, doing that. Today is really important for us, and if we were 0-6 or 6-0, today would have the same importance. The only thing that we talk about is through our work, can we improve? And if we improve, are we tough enough to figure out a way to improve the next day? And how that will all translate, we've been very fortunate to win a game, considering where we were when we began. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. But having said that, because of our work since we began, we've begun to have some traction at times, and we've improved because of that work. And so the race to mature is not who we're playing or what time we're playing or what time of the year. The race for our program, our team to mature is, can we be a little better today than we were yesterday? And so the opponent, because of where we're at, is really ourselves. we spend a lot of time as a staff, I think, as a program, in preparation for an opponent. And that amount of information has somewhat ebbed and flowed in what we disseminate to our team, because relative to where we're at, sometimes they don't need that. They need reminders of what we're supposed to do, because it's still new to them. And so, like in our prep for Missouri, relative to the information we gave them on Missouri, not a lot in comparison to other games, because we lost our way the previous week in what we have to do in order for it to be a game. And so we kind of maybe reverted back in some of those things, but I think our improvement has come from our work. Will we play in a tournament after spring break that you don't have to pay to play in, is too early to tell. But what has transpired since Christmas has been very encouraging in many respects.
Surrounded by a Big 12 region on one side of you and having a lot of coaching relationships with some of those guys, what has it meant to
Yeah.
you to kind of be back down in that region with some of those relationships? I know played with Coach Dixon a lot at TCU, Coach Drew, Coach Beard.
I remember Coach Beard when he was a GA at Incarnate Word. Steve Lutz was his roommate, another assistant at Incarnate Word, who's now at Purdue. Obviously, Coach Drew is not from this part of the country, so I never grew up knowing him, but I grew up knowing his dad. Yeah, I've learned so many lessons. I know I haven't quite been here a year yet. I think it's today is the 23rd. So I guess this would be 295 since I've been back in College Station. I'm not old yet, but I'm closer to old than I am to young. And a lot of the lessons that I've been reminded of, Travis, since I've been back are not necessarily coaching, but you can use a lot of it in those relationships that you mentioned. And I'm using it to try to make sure that I'm doing a good job as a dad of teaching my children. Do you understand that a portion of how I was able to get the Texas A&M job is what transpired 15 years ago? Not necessarily what transpired since the time I left, but that I was even able to get the job at Texas A&M is what had transpired the previous 15 years. And all of that is relationships. Relationships with kids, relationships with parents, relationships with coaches, and how now those assistants that are on my staff, 9 of the 12 of them either played for me, they were a manager for us, or they were a GA for us. And their rise in the profession has been because of how they've handled relationships. And for the most part, they're not from this part of the country, but they're a part of my family, and they're seeing the relationships that I had before I ever met them, and how all of that intertwines and intersects. It's worthy of a book. It's a really good business book on how to build trustful relationships. And so it's been almost a daily reminder for me of how important it is to treat people.
Coach, did you get what you were looking for from the three-point defense in that last game?
Some interesting numbers,
Yeah.
if you study it. The most important number was our ability to contest those shots. Really poor contest rate against South Carolina. I think we talked about that after the game. Really poor. And then what made it even worse is because of how our defense is designed, we hope that it forces you to shoot more threes than you typically shoot. But the stress that comes from that design is if we force you to shoot a three, it probably means on the weak side glass, you have more guys than we do. And so like anything else, there's a cause and an effect. I hope that what we do causes you to shoot a three, but the effect is you're going to have more guys, you're going to outnumber us on the weak side. We didn't contest near good enough against South Carolina, and then LSU and South Carolina just obliterated us relative to their offensive rebounds. So our defensive rebounding percentage was awful, the worst it's been all year. Against Missouri, our contest number was up, and our defensive rebound percentage number was up. And so just like when you're on offense, it looks better when you make shots. When you're on defense, it looks better when you finish the possession with the rebound because it means they missed the shot and you got it.
How much of the free throws is getting the right person at the line at the right time?
There's probably some value in what you just said. Collectively, we shoot 41 free throws against South Carolina. Relative to our roster complexion, that is miraculous. That we made 28 free throws if you didn't know that we shot 41. That is just as miraculous. That we shot 41 and only made 28, now we're back to a normal day. Our points per possession over the last 3 games have been much better because we've been getting fouled more often. There's some comfort in what we're doing. Maybe they're improving. Some of that is true. What I tell our guys, and I'm not saying this is right, nor am I being sarcastic, tough guys make free throws. So wherever you fall on the tough guy spectrum, the more free throws you make, the tougher you are. Missouri made 31 free throws on the road in a row. It's because those kids are tough. Their coach is tough. And then I think they made 25 in a row against us. Yeah, they're tough. And so we have to get tougher for a multitude of reasons, including so that we shoot a higher percentage from the free throw line, so that we are not trying to come up with some math formula on who to get to the line when.
So how tough is Quentin Jackson, and how important was he in your road wins?
Typical junior college kid. You guys know that I went to junior college. I'm a former junior college manager, NAIA manager. I've had at least one junior college player every single year of my head coaching career. That is very important to me. Being transparent, probably more important to me than it should be. It's like my own olive branch on how to help others who have walked that same road. Having said that, pick all of them, and we have several of them that are still playing at the highest level. For whatever reason, Gabe, it normally takes them a semester to figure it out. To figure out the level, to figure out the value of a possession, to figure out the importance of it, to figure out what strength training is, what nutrition is, how to manage your time. It's just part of it. I think Q was probably, and I told his mom this the other day, Q was probably 10 to 13 days ahead in that normalcy. And I had been telling Q, who is ultra intelligent, since I met him, not before him coming to Texas A&M, since I met him, you're going to have to trust me on what I'm going to say to you, because I've seen a lot of Qs in my life. I've seen more Qs than I have not Qs. He's listened, but he hasn't executed well. He didn't execute that plan very well in September. Maybe slightly better in October. But you know, he hollered at me in the game against LSU. And what he said hurt my feelings. And what he said was the truth. And I called the timeout, and I said, I want to explain to you why you're wrong, but I want you to know that I respect why you said what you said. So I'm standing at half court during the timeout having this explanation with him. And then I re-emphasized it in front of the team. That was on Tuesday, so Thursday morning of last week, early bird. And if you're asking the question, you've seen it. You can see his care factor quadrupled in the last month, because he's kind of figured out, like, damn, this is so much bigger than what I dreamed. I got to take advantage of it now. And he's been in here every morning before the sun comes up, and you can see, because he's figured it out, because his work ethic is changing, he's gained some traction. And is he a good player? I don't know. Does he care? Absolutely. And I cheer for that type of story. He was really good against South Carolina.
Yeah.
But that he took his first ever Division I charge, time scoring momentum against Missouri, and then didn't he make 2 free throws at the end? And he wasn't thinking that question when Q was at the line. You know what I mean? Because when the official initiated the ball, you're like, oh, that's basket. I like that.
Coach, what challenges do you expect from this particular Oklahoma State team that you'll see on Saturday?
I think they've had I haven't studied them completely. I went recruiting yesterday, but love Coach Boynton, love his path to head coach. I don't think he's had all of his guys all season long, and I think that it has interrupted a young team's flow. They got 12 back now. He's completely changed their team, but he just got back. I think they were playing guys when he was out, maybe more minutes maybe than they anticipated. 0 is a very good player. 13's a very good player. They just haven't played together many consecutive minutes, and I think that's interrupted what would have been their perfect plan. So in some of my studies, what I think that I'm noticing is some of what I'm watching is probably not accurate relative to who they are now, because the mixture of those guys, it's a small sample size.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay.